Shalom, everyone, to Parshat Shavua with Reb Shlomo. New Parsha, Parshat Re'eh. This coming Shabbat is Parshat Re'eh. This Parsha always comes in conjunction with Rosh Chodesh Elul. It's hard to believe, but the month of Elul is soon upon us. This coming Shabbat is Shabbat Mevorchim, where we announce the new moon. And next week will be Rosh Chodesh Elul. So this parsha begins, Re'eh Anochi Noten Lifneichem Hayom Bracha Uklala. See, I am putting today before you a blessing and a curse. So, as always, Reb Shlomo has way more than we could possibly learn tonight. So I picked out the best that I can. And almost everything that we're going to be learning is based on the first verse. This, of course, is an extremely important verse. See, I put before you today a blessing and a curse. If we look at the rest of the book of Deuteronomy, this theme of blessing and curse will be repeated many times. And at one point, God says, I'm putting before you a blessing and a curse, life and death. Ubacharta b'chaim. You shall choose life. So here, right before Rosh Chodesh Elul, comes Parshat Re'eh, telling us, open your eyes, look, a new year is coming, and the choice is in your hand. Is it going to be a blessing or curse? So almost everything we're going to learn from Reb Shlomo is based on this first verse. Of course, there's many, many things happening in the Parsha, but we're going to be concentrating really on this first verse. So for those who have the book, we're on page 183. If you want to follow 183, this is the first Torah in this Parsha. It's called The Importance of My Vision. So Reb Shlomo begins. As soon as the month of Elul begins, we always read Re'eh Anochi, meaning, see, I put before you. See what I am showing you. God gives every person back a vision of the way they are supposed to look. So already, Reb Shlomo has a unique way to read this. Again, literally, it means, see, I put before you today a blessing and a curse. But he's emphasizing, see, I'm putting before you your eye. We're going to see he repeats this many times. And he's saying what it says, see. So what are we supposed to see? Literally see a blessing and a curse. It's something you can perceive. But here the language is see. So Reb Shlomo says, God gives every person back a vision of the way they're supposed to look. What does he mean here? It says Re'eh Anochi in the singular. Re'eh is singular, speaking to one person. But then it says Noten Lifneichem Hayom is in the plural. So Reb Shlomo asks, what I'm putting before you is already in the plural. So everyone is asking, how come when God says Re'eh, he starts off in the singular, but Lifneichem Hayom, before you today, is already in the plural? So now this is a question that many, many commentaries ask. So this is the way Reb Shlomo is going to answer. He says the answer is very simple. The world thinks that in order to fit into a society, you have to give up your individuality. The more you become a bagel, the more you fit in. Again, this is Reb Shlomo's language here. In other words, the more you're like everyone else, then you feel, the more I'm going to fit in. But in God's society, it's the other way around. If you don't know who you are supposed to be, you're not part of Israel. You're a misfit. If you want to be part of Noten Lifnei Hayom, if you want to be part of this idea that I'm giving before you in the plural today, if you want to be part of all of Israel, you have to embrace that special individuality. So Reb Shlomo is saying something very classic here. This not contradiction, but for some people it is a contradiction. How to maintain your individuality and be part of a group as well. This could be a small group or a huge group, but it's the same principle. How do we maintain our uniqueness and yet fit in with everyone else? The less a person has any idea of what being a Yid is all about, the more they don't know how to be part of all of Israel. So in other words, as long as the individual is not centered or focused or into their Jewishness, how do you expect to fit into all of Israel? So the portion begins, Re'eh Anochi, see I. And in Chasidut, it says that this passage means, I'll show you your I. I will show you what you can be, what you are supposed to be. So again, this is like a play on words. Instead of reading it, see, I put before you today, Reb Shlomo, in the name of many, many different Hasidic rabbis, is saying, see, what is being put in front of you is your I. That's what's being put in front of you. The greatest evil in the world is if you take away someone's hope that they will never be what they wanted to be, what they set out to be. When it comes to all the nations that are fighting Israel, we will either conquer them or make peace with them. Here we could really say, Hashem oz li'amo yitain, Hashem yivarech mo b'shalom. That I'll say, unfortunately, to make peace with our enemies, we have to conquer them. We have to at least conquer their belief that they can destroy us. We have to defeat them spiritually, psychologically, and in most cases militarily, until they give up their desire or their feeling that they can destroy us. So Reb Shlomo says either we'll conquer them or make peace with them. But Amalek is the worst. Amalek says to the Yidden, listen, you were set out to be God's people, but you'll never make it. Let's face it, you will never make it. Yes, you're supposed to be God's chosen people, but look at you. And this is what Amalek is saying to us. Are you succeeding? No, you're a big failure. That's what Amalek is saying to us all the time. As an individual, Amalek comes and says, who do you think you are that you're going to manifest your dreams? Who do you think you are that you're going to be successful? You're a nebuch. Everything you touch doesn't pan out. Who are you fooling? This is the voice of Amalek spiritually. So Reb Shlomo says, what is the difference between the exodus of Egypt and the crossing of the Red Sea? When we came out of Egypt that night, God gave us a vision of what he himself is all about, what God is all about. When we crossed the Red Sea, God gave us a vision of what Yidden are all about. And then he quotes the Midrash that says, Ra'ata shifcha alayam, ma shelo ra'ata Yechezkel ben Buzi. That even the simplest maidservant saw on the sea what the greatest prophet Yechezkel ben Uziel, Ezekiel, couldn't see in Maseh Merkavah. In other words, it's not only we had this vision of God. Reb Shlomo is saying God was giving us a vision of who we could be. Here, we've been slaves we've been in Egypt for hundreds of years. And now we're crossing the Red Sea and God is giving us a taste. You can be free now. You are free. That's a whole different view of oneself. You see what it is. To know what you can be is deeper than prophecy. So I have to tell a quick story about this. I'm going to say that again. You see what it is. To know what you can be is deeper than prophecy. So there's a story that the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of the Chabad movement, was very, very good friends with Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. And they were at a wedding together. And so Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev says to the Alter Rebbe, he said, do you see my student over there? He already is on the level that Eliyahu Navi comes to him. Elijah the prophet already appears to this student. Like he was kind of like showing off his student. And the Alter Rebbe said, you see that student of mine over there? He's in touch with the highest level of his soul, the Yechidah. That's higher than seeing Eliyahu Navi. That's what Reb Shlomo is saying here. He's saying that to know who you can be, meaning to be in contact with the highest level of your soul, highest level of your potential, that's greater than prophecy. It's possible to be the highest prophet in the world. I can know exactly when the Mashiach is coming. I can know what happened exactly 200 years ago. But to know what Yidden are all about, to know God's plan with the Yidden, this is the deepest depths there is, deeper than prophecy. Now, Reb Shlomo goes back to the words, Notein lifnechem, from the first verse. Look, I am putting before you today a blessing and a curse. So Reb Shlomo says, I'll give you back your connection to all of Israel and to the whole world. Rav Kook says, you cannot connect to the whole world unless you are connected to all of Israel. Because all of Israel is God's headquarters to connect to the whole world. So this is in itself such a deep idea that to be connected to the whole world, you can't skip over being connected to all of Israel. Unfortunately, there are many, many, many Jews that want to do this. They don't want to be saddled with the narrow, or at least in their minds, this narrow definition of being a Jew. I want to connect to the whole world. That's a beautiful idea, to be connected to all of humanity. It's actually one of the goals of Mashiach coming, is all of humanity will come together. But what Rav Kook is saying, and of course Reb Shlomo is saying, if you want to be connected to the whole world, first you have to be connected to all of Israel. And I'll add here, based on what Reb Shlomo is saying, but first you have to be connected to who you are. You think you're going to connect to the whole world and you don't even know yourself? That's not going to work. You have to know who you are. That's why Reb Shlomo said that one of the ways of reading this is God is saying, I'll give you back your I. That's where it starts from. That's why Reb Shlomo said already, you can't connect to all of Israel if you don't know who you are. So here we have, first you have to know who you are, know what your purpose is. Then you can connect to all of Israel, and then you can connect to the whole world. L'chaim, everyone, l'chaim. So after we crossed the Red Sea, we got this vision of what will happen until Mashiach is coming. Then he quotes one of the verses from the Song of the Sea, Ad Yavor Amcha Hashem, until your people have crossed over. It was clear to us that we will make it. After Amalek saw the crossing of the Red Sea, by Yavo Amalek. Notice Amalek first attacked us after we crossed the sea. This is something he can't stand. He doesn't mind if you're a Jew for one day, but he wants you to have your doubts about tomorrow. I don't care if you go to Israel for a nice vacation, but to have this vision of who you could be, absolutely not. That's what Amalek is saying. That I won't allow. I've got to get rid of that vision. Reb Shlomo used to tell stories. He used to use the vernacular of someone who got a Jew panic. Like out of nowhere, it's like, maybe I have to do something Jewish. He called it getting a Jew panic. Imagine I walk around being a garbage collector, and someone would tell me, you know something? You can do unbelievable things. It's hard to break away from collecting garbage, but if this vision would be mamish clear to me, it would be so clear to me that I'm wasting my time with garbage. Being in exile is that I lost this vision of what I can do and who I can be. So here he's saying, not on the individual level, all of us being in a state of exile means as individuals and as a collective, we're not sure anymore what is our purpose, who we are. What are we supposed to be doing here? He said, that's the definition of exile. The highest vision in the world is that we can mamish turn the whole world onto God. That is the ultimate vision that we should all have. The ultimate vision is a messianic vision. And we should all believe that, at least in potential, we as individuals and the world and as Am Yisrael can turn on the whole world. Why was Israel given to Avraham and not to Moshe? So now he's going to say a very beautiful, in other words, why was Avram the first Jew and not Moshe? Moshe, this great leader, the one who brings Torah down from heaven, leads all of Am Yisrael for 40 years. Why wasn't the first Jew Moshe? Why Avram? So Reb Shlomo says, Moshe is the greatest expert on prophecy, but the greatest expert on knowing what the Jews need to do, this is Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was praying to God, saying, I'm looking around and I see the whole world is not with you. So Avraham Avinu was praying to God, can't you at least have one family in the world who will always be believing in you? So God says, not only do I grant you your wish, it will be your family. It's a Gefilte. That means that Avraham Avinu's vision will be around until the end of all days. There will always be one family who will eventually make it. I can't help but put in I'll call it a plug for my book, One Was Avraham, because I wrote a whole book on this point of Avram was the first Jew because he had this vision of bringing the one God to the whole world. That was who Avram Avinu was. And that's why we're all followers of Avram Avinu. Now, friends, let it be clear to you, You cannot have a real vision of yourself unless you have a vision of all of Israel. This is what he said before, but here he's putting in the idea of vision. And you can't have a vision of all of Israel unless you have a vision of yourself, because we are each a part of the holiest children of Avraham. So it begins, Re'eh Anochi, see I. God says, I'm giving you back your vision of your eyes to mamish know what you can do. Noten lifnechem, to put before you, but I'm giving it back to you in the midst of all of Israel. So here, that's the end of the first piece. Here, Reb Shlomo is really trying to focus on this idea of the individual and the group. And that without having your own private, individual, unique vision, you can't really connect to all of Israel. But if you're not connected to all of Israel, you're not going to be able to have your individual vision either. And then without the individual and Israel, we can't have a broad enough vision to fulfill our purpose of bringing God's oneness and light and healing to the whole world. So this is a very, very beautiful and an important idea that Reb Shlomo is sharing with us. The next one is on page 186, and it's called Hayom. Again, this is from the opening verse. Ra'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. See, I am putting before you today a blessing and a curse. So the question is, what's the greater significance of the verse saying today? So Reb Shlomo starts, how long is the day? Gefilte is the day long. You know what the saddest thing in the world is? Our days are so short. Gefilte are our days short. Time flies so fast. We wake up in the morning and we feel as though we just went to sleep. We go to sleep thinking we just woke up. By the way, when I read this, and I'm giving it over, these ideas are expressed in my book about time, becoming a master of time. So he's saying such important things here. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked Eliyahu Navi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was a sage from 2,000 years ago, and it says that he had a elevation of soul, and he was in the in contact with the soul of Mashiach. And he asked him, when is the master coming? And Eliyahu responded to him, Hayom, today. I'm coming today. So Yeshua ben Levi was like so excited, like, Mamash, Mashiach himself told me he's coming today. The day goes by and Mashiach doesn't come. And so Yeshua ben Levi, who's on a very, very high level, is in contact with Eliyahu Navi. And he says, the Mashiach lied to me. He said, he's coming today. And Eliyahu said to him, you didn't understand the meaning of Hayom. He was taking it from a verse. And this is, we say it every Kabbalat Shabbat, in the first psalm that we say of Kabbalat Shabbat. Hayom im b'koli tishma'u. Today, if you will listen to my voice. That's what he meant, meaning all of Israel, not just you personally. When all of Israel listens to my voice, I'm coming today. So Reb Shlomo says, so Eliyahu answered him, Hayom. Actually, he means Mashiach answered him, Hayom. How could that be? You know how? Because Gefilte is that day long. And here I want you to know something very deep. We always say that God's day is 1,000 years. In one of the Tehillim, we say that a day in God's eyes are like 1,000 years. We are not talking about a different kind of clock. What does it mean that God's day is 1,000 years? A person with God can do in one day what other people do in 1,000 years. Can you imagine how much the tzaddikim were able to do in one day? They learned 20 hours and they talked to thousands of people. As much as the day is long, the greater you are, the longer your time is. If you are mamish on a God time level, it's really long. So there's a lot behind this. Everyone should read my book, Becoming a Master of Time. This has to do with consciousness. Just like in a dream, if doctors hooked a person up to their brain waves, and they can detect when is dream time. They can detect it. And so it could be that a person is dreaming for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. In those 10 or 15 minutes, it seems like lifetimes go by. Whole stories with hundreds of details play themselves out. But on the clock, it was only 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Or in a prophetic state, in 1 minute, God just opens up the gates and one sees everything. If you remember, we learned that in Parshat Re'eh, Moshe was praying 515 prayers to come into Israel, and God refused him. But he said, I'll take you up in the mountain and I will show you Eretz Yisrael. And it says he showed him, the different parts of Israel, ad Hayom ha'acharon, till the final sea. So in a simple meaning, that means the Mediterranean. He's up in a mountain in Moab, and technically, he could see to the Mediterranean. But Rashi says that the sages say, don't read it Yam ha'acharon, read it Yom ha'acharon. He showed Moshe all of history. And very likely, in showing him all of history, Moshe came to understand why God was not letting him into Israel right then. But my point is that Moshe's up on the mountain not for that long, and God is showing him all of history, thousands of years of history. So time is relative. That's what Reb Shlomo is trying to say. Your day could be very short, meaning you don't do anything important, meaningful, focused, with intent, with direction. Or with all of those things, intent and focus and direction and purpose, sometimes it's incredible what we can get done in one day. And I'm sure everyone's had this experience of both, that you come to the end of the day and you just kind of look back and like, what did I do today? Like, oh my gosh, like nothing. I just wasted a whole day. Or the opposite. Sometimes after a day, we look back and like, I cannot believe what happened today, what I was able to accomplish, how long the day was. So here in our verse, Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala, one of the insight understanding is God is giving us the ability to make our days long, meaning meaningful. And here, okay, back to Reb Shlomo. And here I have to share with you something awesome. When God spoke to Adam and he told him that if, God forbid, he eats from the tree of knowledge, that he will die, it uses the word death twice. Mot you tumat. You will certainly die. There are all kinds of commentaries on this. I'll tell you just two Torahs. If you ask a person who only ate from the tree of knowledge, and you ask them 1 minute before they died, how was your life? Do you know what they might say? I never lived. I was dead my whole life. Unfortunately, this is a very real thing. There are many, many people who get to the end of their life and they're filled with regrets. They're overwhelmed with all of the potential or vision they had for their life that was not fulfilled. That's a very, very sad ending. So God says, Mot tumat, what does it mean? You will certainly die. He says, Chas v'sholom, on the day that you will die, you will never say that you were alive. You were dead your whole life. That's what it says, Mot yumat. You look back on your life as if you were dead your whole life. What happens, God forbid, when a person dies? You say, Gaval, life passed by so fast. How long does the day take? Nothing, it's just gone. So God says, if you eat from the tree of knowledge, your life will be on the level of dying all the time. You're always on your way out. Chas v'shalom. And here, I think some of you will appreciate it. One of the classic lines from a Bob Dylan song is, he who is not busy being born is busy dying. Classic line from Bob Dylan, he who is not busy being born is busy dying. You know how heartbreaking it is to know that not only is it in my hands to know what to do with that minute, it's even in my hands how long that minute is. Reb Shlomo is saying a very deep thing. And like I said, my whole book on becoming a master of time is based on these same ideas, that time is relative. Our consciousness can stretch time. God says it's up to you to make this day a blessing or not. Remember the verse we're going on, Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. One of the explanations, what Reb Shlomo is saying right here, it's up to you if today is a bracha or a klala. Is it a long day or is it a short day? Is it a purposeful day or a not purposeful day? This one day can be 1,000 years, or this one day can be one lousy second. The Ishbitzer says a mind-blowing Torah. The name of the month Elul comes from the word alal. One of its meaning is unimportant. Do you know what the most heartbreaking thing is? Not only does the day pass by so fast, the day passes with unimportant things. We never really do the most important things. Everyone is crutching and complaining that the Mashiach should come. God put us into the world to bring the Mashiach. If you look at all of Israel, how many minutes a day do we spend bringing the Mashiach? How many minutes a day do we do something constructive? This is really, really important Torah for right before Elul. Remember, the first thing I said is this parsha always will come in conjunction, like right before or right after Rosh Chodesh Elul. It's always in the same week, one way or another. And that's what we're being told at the beginning, Elul. See, I'm putting before you today a blessing and a curse. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide what you want your days to be. One of the deepest moments in my life, now Reb Shlomo is telling a personal story here. One of the deepest moments in my life is when I was 3 years old on Tisha B'Av. It was the first time in my life I noticed that my parents weren't eating. So I said to my father, why don't you eat? He put me on his knees and he was telling me the whole story of the Beit HaMikdash. It was so sad. In Germany, Reb Shlomo grew up in Germany. In Germany, Tisha B'Av ends late at around 10 o'clock. I woke up at around 11 o'clock and I saw my parents eating. I mamish jumped out of my bed and began dancing like mad. So my father says, why are you dancing? Because the Holy Temple is rebuilt. So my father says, why do you think it's rebuilt? He says, because you are eating. So he's 3 years old. So his father explained, I'm not eating because the temple is destroyed. So he sees him eating, so he assumes it's rebuilt. See, I thought that they are mamish not eating until the Holy Temple is rebuilt. So my father again put me on his knee and began explaining to me. Reb Shlomo says, children are very real. If you are fasting because the temple is destroyed, how can you eat after that? Shouldn't we wait to eat until the temple is rebuilt? That's how a child thinks. So he said, children, sadly enough, you have to compromise. What can you do? Life has to go on. Very, very deep story. Okay, we want to get as much in as we can. So we're going now to page 190. I just want to share with everyone that I heard in many different contexts that Reb Shlomo always said, everything that I am or I received from my Abba. He always held his Abba in tremendous honor and reverence. On page 190, this is a short one, but it's such a good idea. It's called, Who Are You Working For? So Reb Shlomo says, it's possible to do everything right without depth. Now imagine someone will call me up and ask me to get him a piece of gefilte fish for Shabbos. Someone's asking me to do a favor. I will go to Mea Shearim and get a piece of gefilte fish. I put it in a half-dirty napkin, place it in my pocket, and then I bring it to this schlepper. And I'm thinking, he never ate anything clean anyways. Now imagine Rabbi Nachman would ask me to bring him a piece of fish, lekavod Shabbos. Is that the way you bring fish to Reb Nachman? Where is your respect? So the Beit Yaakov says, this is one of the line of the Ishbitz Rebbe's, do you know for whom you are doing the mitzvahs? Is that the way to do a mitzvah? In other words, Reb Shlomo just gave us a parable. And now he's trying to explain, when we do a mitzvah, We're doing a mitzvah for Hashem. Question is, like, are we putting the gefilte fish in a dirty napkin and putting it in our pocket and just like giving it to him? Or are we going to get the best piece of fish and hand it over to Rabbi Nachman on a beautiful tray l'kavod Shabbos? So the Beis Yaakov says, is this any way to do a mitzvah? Re'eh anochi. Again, the first two words of the parsha. See, I, anochi. Anochi is the first word of the Ten Commandments. Re'eh anochi. You need a little vision of that anochi to remember who you are really working for. It's a very simple idea, but harder than we think sometimes. Because if we're all honest with ourselves, how many times do we use the expression, knock off a mitzvah, knock off a blessing, not thinking about it, not focusing, no kavana, but we're doing it because we know it's the right thing to do, and we want to do the right thing, but we're not doing with any depth. This was one of Reb Shlomo's main teachings. And I mean this with a capital M for main. He was always teaching this idea that if you're going to do something, do it with your whole being, with your whole heart. Doing things superficially just doesn't make it. It might be you're doing the right thing, but it's not making it. Okay, now we're jumping to page 197. It's called My Real I. What is it that makes most people drift away from Yiddishkeit, away from Judaism? Very simple. When people feel that it's not really for them, it may be good for you, it may be good for someone else, but it's not really good for me. So Reb Shlomo says, let's start from the other side. I can serve God my whole life as an outsider, while the real I wasn't into it. But the deeper truth is, you don't have your own I yet. It's not that you have an I and it didn't connect to Yiddishkeit. You simply didn't get your own I yet. Does everyone hear what he's saying here? Because this is a complaint that many people have about life in general, but here we'll just talk about Judaism. It doesn't work for me. I don't relate to it. I don't connect to it. And this can be many things in life. But what Reb Shlomo is saying, when you say, I don't connect to it, and I don't get it, or I don't feel it, Reb Shlomo is saying the reason you don't feel it because you're not operating from your real I. You're operating from a superficial level of soul, or a very super level of body that's ruling over the soul. And that's why you're not connecting. If it was the real I, you would be totally connected. So he says, what does it mean to marry your soulmate? To marry your soulmate means your I is married to that person's I. Not to be married to your soulmate means you were married, but your I wasn't in it. So in Elul, we say, Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. I belong to the one that loves me, and my lover belongs to me, because it's the real I. Ani l'dodi. The real I is to my beloved. And my beloved, their I is to me. It means that for the first time, my real eye is turning to the Rabboni Shalom. So now he's talking about the month of Elul. So he says in Elul, it means that for the first time, my real eye is turning to the Rabboni Shalom, the master of the world. All year long, I'm serving God, but it's not with my real eye. My real eye isn't in it. Imagine there would be only one Jew in the world, and I would be that one Jew. I hear God's voice on Mount Sinai. I mamish know that God is talking only to me because I'm the only one there. The thing is that God spoke to all of Israel. It's very beautiful that God spoke to all of Israel, but since he spoke to all of Israel, it is possible to serve God on an outside level. Why? This is going back to his previous Torah about the individual and the group, is that sometimes we could get so lost in the group that we lose our individuality. And so because God spoke to all of Israel at Sinai, it's possible that a person as an individual is like, that's very nice. God spoke to all Israel, but I don't feel he spoke to me personally. So Reb Shlomo says, Re'eh, the first word of the Parsha, see, Re'eh, is Lashon Yachid, is in the singular. One person in the singular. Noten lifnechem, putting it before you, is in the plural. So God is saying, I'm giving you an eye that, 1 second. I'm giving you an anochi. Now again, the first two words are Re'eh anochi. See, I am giving you. But here, he's reading it. See, I'm giving you your eye. And do you know how I'm giving it to you? Noten lifnechem, by putting it before all of you. Despite the fact that I said the same thing to everyone, you will still know that I meant it only for you. So that's a certain talent that certain people have, that a teacher or a rabbi or a rebbe or whatever is speaking to tens of people or hundreds of people, but everyone there thinks he's telling me exactly what I need to hear right now. Exactly what I need to hear right now. Okay, we have time for one more. That's on page 201. And here, this is going on a different part of the Parsha. Up to now, it was all on the first verse. So this is based on the idea that when God expands your borders, it's talking about a time in the future when the borders of Israel expand. So this is what Reb Shlomo says. And again, but he's going to make this very individual. Here it's talking about the borders of Israel and how it affects all of Israel. So he says, how good does a person feel when they meet someone familiar to them? Imagine you move to Paris and you're walking down the street. You don't know anyone. You move to Paris. Something told you that you need a change. So you move to Paris. You don't know anyone. You could, okay, so you're walking down the street and you don't know anyone. You could love Paris. It's a beautiful city. But what happens to you when you suddenly meet someone from your hometown? Out of nowhere, you begin to feel such inner simcha. Imagine, I'm sure everyone's been in this situation. You're in a strange place, maybe not 100% sure of what you're doing there or what's going to be, and you meet someone that you know. And all of a sudden you feel this familiarity and it brings you joy. So Reb Shlomo says like this, let me ask you a stupid question. If you were so happy in New York, why did you go live in Paris? Isn't it crazy? Here I am so happy to meet someone who is familiar, but I only came here because I felt that I had to get away from everyone I know. This is such a human thing he's explaining here. I think everyone's experienced this in different ways, different circumstances. On one hand, I need something new. I'm just tired of the old. I'm tired with the familiarity. And then you get to the new place and you feel out of place. Now open your hearts to the deepest depths. On the one hand, I like to make my borders wider. Now remember, this is going on this verse, when God expands your borders. So he says, on one hand, I like to make my borders wider. Now, go to new places, new experiences. I like to go to places I've never been before. But in a crazy way, I love connecting with something familiar. I want the old and I want the new. So here, it's such a psychologically relevant idea. I'm skipping a paragraph. He says, imagine I travel to Hong Kong and I stay in the fanciest hotel. Then I come home to my little house. Why am I so happy? Let's face it, the Sheraton in Hong Kong is more beautiful. On the one hand, I want something new, but this new doesn't belong to me. I'm just looking around. Do you know what it means when something is spiritually familiar to me? It means that it belongs to me. So I want to end with an idea that I've given over many times. And the reason is because it's very meaningful to me. And that is, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this one way or another, is that you go out into beautiful nature. I'm sure, like many, many other people, I've been privileged to be in a lot of places in the world, incredible beauty. The expression I always use is niflaot haboreh, the wonders of the Creator. You see these incredible mountains and waterfalls and rivers and redwood trees and what have you. And it's just gorgeous. And then you come to Israel and you see all the same things, but like in miniature. Like Mount Hermon is just one of my favorite places. Anywhere you are in the Galil on a clear day, you see Har Hermon. And I just feel such a soul connection to Har Hermon. But in relationship, I lived in Denver for 7 years. We were in the Rockies all the time. There's, I forgot the number, something like 50 peaks over 14,000 feet in Colorado alone. But for me, the difference is I was just at the Banyas last week. There has to, without exaggeration, there has to be 1,000 waterfalls in America bigger than the Banyas. But when you stand at the Banyas, it's like with such awe. And as I've explained many times, the difference, the way I understand it is, the difference is Har Hermon is mine. The Banyas is mine. The Jordan River is mine. All these other places are so beautiful, but they're not mine. So now I'm just going to read what Reb Shlomo said again. Do you know what it means when something is spiritually familiar to me? It means that it belongs to me. So that's why my house is better than the Sheraton in Hong Kong, because the Sheraton doesn't belong to me. But my house, that's mine. So I want to give everyone a bracha, that he used the example here of giving the Torah at Mount Sinai. And for those who were here last week, we had a great question. It was a Tuesday class from Dennis, who was asking this midrash that says that when a fetus is in the womb, an angel comes and there's a candle lit in the womb, and the angel teaches the Torah, the entire Torah, to the fetus. And right before the fetus is born, touches right here in the cleft of the lip and forgets it. And so I mentioned this idea. So the classic question is, if that's the plan, why teach the baby the whole Torah in the first place? What's the point? And the answer is that the Torah is forgotten consciously, but it is embedded deeply in the subconscious. And that's why when many people, doesn't matter at what age, who are somewhat estranged from Judaism, or just never had the upbringing, and all of a sudden are exposed to Torah, the feeling is, this is familiar. I know this. So Dennis asked a classic question. He asked, is this true for just Jews? What about a convert? Did a convert hear in the womb? Did the convert learn the whole Torah and then forgot it, but somewhere in life was exposed to different things of Israel and Judaism and Torah, and it was like, oh, I know this is familiar. So I asked Rav Ginsburg, and he said, it's true of everyone in the world. He said, not even just converts, because ultimately the Torah is meant for everyone in the world. And that's why you have so many people who either they convert or they become attached to Israel or the Jewish people or the Torah, and not necessarily become Jewish. But Rav Ginsburg says that everyone is taught this Torah in the womb. It's in the unconscious of the whole world. It will not be fully realized until Mashiach comes. That's part of the whole thing. When Mashiach comes, and we're told we'll teach the whole world, well, why will the world get turned on? Because it's already in the unconscious. And the Mashiach will have the language to give that over. So all of this was part of a bracha that I'm giving to everyone, that everyone should feel that the Torah is mine. The Torah is mine. That ani ludodi v'dodi li. I am to my beloved, I am to God, and God is to me. That we should feel that God is my beloved, mine. And for anyone who's been in Eretz Yisrael, you know that feeling. You know that feeling of coming home. I've heard from many, many elderly people who only come to Israel once or twice in their life, for like 2 weeks at a time. And I've heard it over and over again. And they never make an attempt to live here or wouldn't consider it. But I've heard many, many people say, when I was in Israel, I felt like I was home. They felt it. They felt it. For whatever reason, this lifetime, they didn't merit to actually make this their home, but they felt it. So we should all feel Eretz Yisrael is ours, the Torah is ours, and God is ours, meaning ours in relationship. Ani ledodi, v'dodi li.